The streets of Ikota bustled with life as usual, hawkers shouting over each other, motorcycles weaving through narrow gaps, and children running barefoot across dust-caked pavements. Among them wandered a man the locals called Mafa. He was a ragged shadow in human form, mumbling to himself, waving at nothing. His patched kaftan barely clung to his lean frame, and his long, tangled beard made him look ancient. People barely looked twice anymore. Some said he was once a pastor. Others claimed he'd lost his mind after a tragedy. No one really cared. Mafa had become a living ghost in the neighborhood. The kind everyone sees but no one sees. But Mafa was watching. Every smile, every tear, every woman walking alone. His eyes, hidden behind the fog of madness, were sharp, focused, and hungry. At night, when the last market stall shut down and the streets dimmed into silence, Mafa changed. He didn't limp. He didn't mumble. His posture straightened. His steps became sure. Like a snake shedding its skin, he became someone else, silent, swift, deadly. That night, a girl from a nearby bakery never came home. Her name was Simi. A soft-spoken 23-year-old who sold meat pies by the bus stop. Her mother thought she had stayed over with a friend. Her brother assumed she went to church for night vigil. By the time they started asking questions, 2 days had passed. And Simi was already gone. Buried under concrete somewhere outside town, her blood drained into a bowl, her picture burned in a room where evil men made sacrifices for power. Mafa, once again in rags, dancing in the streets, walked past her grieving mother and smiled. He knew no one would ever suspect him. And that was his power. 2 weeks after Simi vanished, the noise died down. People mourned, but life moved on. A missing girl wasn't strange in Ikota. Some blamed ritualists. Others blamed trafficking. But no one linked it to the man who played with stones by the roadside. Mafa was back in full madness mode, talking to goats, laughing at trees, and scaring off kids with sudden claps. He had learned the art of blending into the chaos. It was his mask, and it worked every time. That week, he followed another woman, Ikota. She sold tomatoes under the bridge near the motor park. She was pregnant, 7 months in, but still stood all day with her wares. Mafa watched her every day. He learned her routines. She always left at 8:30 p.m., took the short path through the railway tracks, and never looked back. One night, he waited. As her footsteps echoed between the metal rails, she saw him too late. He dragged her away before she could scream. And just like that, another life disappeared. Ikota's husband went mad from grief. He stormed police stations, shouted at news reporters, and accused everyone from her co-workers to the bikemen. But no evidence surfaced. The CCTV by the bridge hadn't worked in 3 years. Her friends at the market only remembered her leaving. No one saw where she went. Mafa had already returned to the street, chewing on dry gari and spitting it at passers-by. The city moved on. But not everyone forgot. One woman watched closely, Zina. She worked as a nurse at a small health center nearby. She also happened to be Ikota's childhood friend. When she saw the news of her disappearance, something inside her snapped. She remembered a man in rags sitting near the stalls, always staring, always quiet. Something about him had bothered her then. Now it haunted her. Zina started asking questions. She talked to hawkers, bikers, cleaners, anyone who may have seen Ikota that night. Many laughed her off. "You're looking for spirits," one said. "The streets don't care who they swallow." But one boy, a 12-year-old water seller named F, said something strange. "A madman followed her," he whispered. "He was humming a song about fire. I see him every day. He sleeps under the yellow bus shell." Zina couldn't sleep that night. F's words repeated in her mind like a warning. He sings about fire. She knew that song. Ikota used to hum it when they were in school, a lullaby their grandmother taught them. It was odd. Too specific. How would a madman know that? By morning, Zina went straight to the abandoned yellow bus F had mentioned. It was an old, rusted shell near the back of a mechanic yard. Nobody cared about it anymore. But there, lying flat on the concrete beside the bus, was Mafa, fast asleep, arms folded under his head. She stared at him for a long time. He didn't look dangerous. He looked broken. But Zina had learned long ago that evil never came with a warning sign. She snapped a picture with her phone and walked away. Later that day, she showed it to Isioma's husband, Chuka. He shook his head. "That's Mafa," he said. "Everyone knows him. He's mad, Zina. You're wasting your time." But Zina's instincts wouldn't rest. The next day, she returned to the bus and watched from a distance. Mafa moved slowly, sweeping invisible dust, mumbling to people who weren't there. But then, around 7 p.m., she saw something odd. He stood still. Silent. His eyes scanned the area, sharp and alert. For a second, he wasn't mad. He looked like a man on a mission. Then, just as quickly, he returned to his gibberish and sat in the dirt. That moment confirmed everything. She wasn't imagining it. Zina decided to report her suspicion to the police. She went to the local station and asked to speak to an investigator. That's how she met Inspector Korede. He was tall, serious, and tired. He listened as Zina explained, but his face didn't change. "You're saying a madman is kidnapping women?" he asked. "Do you know how many missing person reports we get every month?" But something in Zina's eyes made him pause. She wasn't hysterical. She was focused. Korede took the photo. "I'll look into it," he said, though not very convinced. After she left, he showed it to his junior officers. Laughter followed. "That one," someone said. "I've given him 10 naira before. He can't kidnap a goat." But Korede didn't laugh. He had seen strange things before. And sometimes, the most dangerous men wore the best disguises. He decided to watch Mafa himself. That night, Inspector Korede sat in his car, parked near the abandoned bus. He kept the lights off, his engine low. Hours passed. Mafa did nothing. He mumbled, rolled on the floor, and even urinated by a wall. Korede sighed. Maybe the girl was chasing ghosts. But then, at exactly 11:03 p.m., Mafa stood up. He walked with a different energy. No limping. No talking. Just a straight walk towards the outskirts. Korede followed him, headlights off. Inspector Korede kept his distance as he trailed the man through narrow alleys and bush paths. Mafa's pace was deliberate. Confident. He moved like someone who knew exactly where he was going. They walked past sleeping houses and through a broken fence that led into an abandoned compound. Korede stopped and crouched behind a wall. Mafa disappeared into the darkness beyond. Minutes later, a faint light flickered from one of the back rooms of the building. Korede dared not move closer. The sound of chanting, low and rhythmic, carried through the still air. He could make out more than one voice. Someone else was in there. Maybe many. The chanting grew louder, then stopped. Silence. Korede's heart thudded. He stayed until the light went off, then slipped away the same way he came. Back at the station, Korede filed an unofficial report. He didn't mention the ritualistic chanting. Just that the man everyone believed to be mentally ill was using an abandoned building at night and seemed to have associates. He marked the location on a map and placed it in his drawer. He needed more. Something he could hold in court. For now, it was just suspicion. Zina hadn't stopped either. While Korede watched Mafa, she visited 3 families of missing women. Their stories were nearly the same. The last time they were seen was near Mafa's usual spots. Market paths, roadside stalls, church gates. She wrote everything down, piecing together a pattern. There were too many coincidences. But the case needed more than patterns, it needed proof. 2 nights later, another woman went missing. Her name was Adayabi, a youth corps member teaching in the local secondary school. She had gone to buy food from a roadside vendor after night class. She never returned. Her roommate thought she'd gone home for the weekend. No one raised the alarm until Monday. This time, Korede felt the weight. Another name. Another face. Another young woman gone in the shadows. He drove to the last known location, interviewed the vendors. A fruit seller mentioned a madman watching her as she walked by. He kept looking at her like he knew her, the man said. Then he disappeared. Korede showed him Mafa's photo. That's the one, the seller said immediately. Always sits across the road, playing with sticks. That was all Korede needed. He returned to the station and pulled 2 trusted officers aside. We're going in quiet, he said. Tonight. They armed themselves and moved after dark. The plan was simple: observe, confirm, and follow. If they caught anyone in the act, they'd make arrests. But that night, Maffa didn't leave his spot. He sat for hours in the dirt, smiling at the moon. The officers began to doubt. "This man is playing us," one muttered. But Korede knew better. This wasn't coincidence. He just had to wait for the crack to open again. 3 nights passed with no movement. Maffa remained rooted to his usual spots, barefoot, dazed, harmless. Inspector Korede grew frustrated. If this man was really behind the disappearances, then he was being careful. Too careful. On the 4th night, Korede made a decision. He approached Zina again. They met in the corner of the health center where she worked, away from listening ears. "I need your help," he said bluntly. "Not as a witness, but as bait." Zina's eyes widened. "You want me to walk into danger? Alone?" "Not alone," Korede replied. "We'll be watching. Every step." It took convincing, but Zina agreed. She was tired of watching more girls vanish. If this could bring answers, she was ready. That evening, they dressed her in plain clothes and gave her a discreet tracking device. She walked along the same path Adayabi had taken, her steps slow and deliberate. She passed Maffa once. He didn't move. Just stared. The second time, he followed. Korede's team stayed close, watching from unmarked cars and hidden corners. Maffa followed her for 10 minutes, keeping distance, never rushing. Zina kept calm, heart racing. Then she turned into a dead-end alley. Maffa sped up. That was when the officers moved. Guns drawn, flashlights blinding. "Freeze!" Korede barked. Maffa stood still, blinking against the light. His hands were empty. His expression, blank. "I was just walking," he said, voice soft, almost childlike. "She looked like my sister." There was no weapon. No evidence. No confession. Nothing to hold him. Back at the station, they questioned him for hours. He laughed, cried, whispered to invisible people. A psychologist was brought in. "Classic schizophrenia," she said. "You've got the wrong guy." Korede wanted to scream. But Zina wasn't convinced. She leaned in during the questioning, asking questions only Isioma would know the answers to. At one point, Maffa twitched. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "She screamed just like you," he whispered. Then his face went blank again. Korede caught it. "We've got him," he said quietly. "We just need to break him." They let him go. Publicly. But now, they followed him closely. Maffa returned to his street corner like nothing happened. He danced in circles, smeared sand on his face, and begged for sachet water. The neighbors laughed. Kids threw wrappers at him. Everyone had already heard he was arrested and let go. "Police no get sense," a kiosk woman said. "Wasting time on a madman." But Maffa's eyes weren't the same. Something behind them had shifted. He wasn't just watching anymore, he was aware of being watched. Korede's team rotated in pairs, trailing him quietly in unmarked clothes. But Maffa knew. He began switching routes, doubling back, ducking behind shops. The man who played dumb was now playing chess. Korede realized he was running out of time. Then came the break. One of the officers tailing Maffa at night saw him meet a man by the canal. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a clean shirt who didn't belong in that part of town. They exchanged a handshake. Something passed between them. Then they both vanished behind a warehouse gate. The officer called it in. By the time backup arrived, the place was empty. But behind the gate, hidden under rusted drums and wood panels, was a tunnel. Korede called in reinforcements and entered the tunnel with 3 armed officers. It led deep under the old warehouse and into a wide underground chamber. What they found made 2 officers throw up. It was a ritual room, black-stained walls, burnt bones, chalk drawings, and rows of pictures of missing women. At the center was a stone altar with dried blood. There was no one inside. But someone had been there recently. The air was still warm from fire. A phone vibrated on a nearby mat, left behind in a rush. Korede picked it up. The wallpaper was a photo of Maffa. Now the mask was gone. They were not just dealing with a lone madman. There was a network. And it was organized. Mafa, it seemed, was only the beginning. The discovery under the warehouse shook everyone involved. Korede knew they couldn't go public, not yet. If they announced it, the ritual group would vanish before they could be caught. So they sealed off the area under false pretenses. Structural collapse risk, they told the press. Meanwhile, Korede and his team reviewed every photo, every object recovered from the chamber. 22 missing women were identified from the photos. But there were others' faces no one had reported. Unknown victims. The phone recovered near the altar proved even more revealing. It held call logs, voice notes, and one encrypted folder. The tech team cracked it in 2 days. Inside were videos, gruesome recordings of rituals, women bound and sobbing, masked men chanting in circles. The same chant Korede had heard that night in the abandoned compound. Each video ended the same way, a bowl of blood, silence, and a match lit with a whispered word Araka. It was a code word. A name. Something. Korede printed it on his board. Meanwhile, Mafa was still loose. He had gone underground, disappeared completely. No one had seen him for 3 days. His usual sleeping spot lay empty. He'd taken his mask off and slipped into darkness. Zina was moved to a safe house. Korede didn't trust the silence. It was the kind that came before a storm. He knows we're close, Zina said. He won't run. He'll lash out. Korede nodded. He'd seen the same with drug lords. Cornered monsters didn't hide, they attacked. Sure enough, it began. A woman in Ajagunal vanished on her way back from a vigil. The next day, another from Festac, then one in Suralire. Each crime scene had a symbol painted in charcoal, a circle with 2 horizontal lines. Araka's mark. This wasn't random. It was a message. Korede's department was now officially on high alert. He was told to back down until federal support arrived, but he refused. We don't have time, he said. These people are killing every day. I'm not sitting on my hands. Using cell tower pings from the ritualist's phone, they traced the most frequent location, an abandoned apartment in Oberland. Korede and his team stormed it at dawn. They found robes, skulls, candles, but no people. Just one thing scribbled on the wall in blood. You opened your eyes. Now lose your sleep. That night, Korede didn't sleep. Neither did Zina. Because they both knew. The real hunt had just begun. Inspector Korede stared at the bloody message for a long time. The writing wasn't just a warning, it was personal. Someone knew he was getting close. And worse, they wanted him to feel it. That same night, he got a call that made his blood run cold. One of his officers, Akeem, hadn't come home. His wife had been calling since afternoon. His phone had gone off. Korede ordered a trace, but it was already too late. Akeem's body was found in the backseat of his own car, parked under 3rd Mainland Bridge, throat slit, eyes wide open. Inside his clenched fist was a torn piece of cloth gray, with a familiar yellow line. Mafa's signature kaftan. Korede didn't speak for hours after seeing the body. He just stood there, jaw tight, hands shaking. They're retaliating, he finally said. They're not running. They're fighting. The department descended into paranoia. Every officer who'd been part of the warehouse raid was now considered a target. Escorts were assigned. Phones were tapped. Movement restricted. But Korede didn't stop. He worked longer hours, barely eating. He kept going over the evidence, the footage, the faces in the videos. One of the masked men had a limp, subtle, but there. Another had a burn scar on his left wrist. Patterns began to form. He started matching voice notes to known criminals. One matched a man named Chief Iranmos, a businessman who claimed to run a real estate empire. Another matched a local herbalist with a history of trafficking cases. This wasn't a cult, it was a cartel. They used Mafa as their scout. He chose the girls, tracked them, and delivered them. The madman wasn't mad. He was the recruiter. Zina watched everything unfold from the safe house. But she wasn't safe. One evening, the power went out. Then a knock came at the back door. No one was supposed to know that door existed. She froze. Her phone battery was dead. She crept to the kitchen, found a knife, and stood still in the dark. The knock came again. Then silence. A minute later, someone tried the handle. That's when backup arrived. 3 officers burst in from the front, guns drawn. The figure at the back door vanished into the bush. When they chased, they found footprints, but not the person. Zina was shaken. She looked around the house and found something lodged in the kitchen window. A folded piece of paper. One word written in charcoal, soon. Zina didn't sleep after that night. Every creak, every buzz of her phone, every flicker of the light made her heart jump. She began sleeping with the knife under her pillow, checking the doors 5 times before bed. "They know where I am," she told Korede the next morning. "They're watching." Korede moved her again, this time to a secure location under the care of 2 trusted agents. But it wasn't just about protecting her anymore. She was now the key witness. If anything happened to her, the entire case would collapse. Meanwhile, Korede was running out of options. Surveillance on the suspects was yielding little. Chief Iranmo stayed clean, kept smiling at public events, and denied every whisper of wrongdoing. The herbalist, Baba Osato, had gone off the radar. Every trail went cold. But the rituals hadn't stopped. A video dropped anonymously online, a shadowy clip of masked men, a candlelit room, and a woman pleading for her life. The police scrambled to trace the upload source, but it was routed through multiple locations. The caption read, "You cannot stop the fire." That same night, another body turned up. Dumped by a canal in Mushin, a young woman with ritual marks on her chest and cuts across her wrists. Her ID card identified her as Ifeoma Nduka, a university student on holiday. She was last seen boarding a bus. The bus driver had no memory of her. No passenger logs. No CCTV. She had simply vanished, like the others. Korede gathered his team. "We strike now," he said. "No more waiting." He'd been collecting intel from a source, someone close to the group, but scared to talk. That source finally agreed to meet. They set the meeting at an unfinished estate just outside Betagri. Korede went in plain clothes, armed, with 2 unmarked backup teams stationed nearby. The source arrived late. A woman in her 40s, jittery, with bruises on her arm and a scarf hiding half her face. "My brother is in it," she whispered. "They call him the gatekeeper. He handles the transport. He knows where the next sacrifice is happening." Korede leaned in. "Where?" She hesitated. "Tomorrow. Midnight. A warehouse in Iliko. But you have to go quiet. If they sense you, they'll kill the girl before you step in." Korede nodded. "We'll be ready." But as he turned to leave, the woman grabbed his sleeve. "They have a list," she said. "People marked. Zina is on it. So are you." Korede stared at her. "How long do we have?" She looked up, eyes filled with panic. "Not long. They've already started watching your son." That was when Korede's phone rang. It was his house help. "Sir, please come home. Your boy, he didn't come back from school." Inspector Korede's heart pounded as he raced through the streets, siren blaring. Every corner of Lagos seemed too slow, every traffic light too long. His mind screamed the same thought over and over, "They've taken my son." He reached his estate gate, leapt out of the car before it stopped fully, and stormed inside. His wife was in tears. "He left school at 2, she sobbed. "He never made it home." Korede called his contacts at the school. The security guard confirmed Korede's son, Dara, had boarded his usual tricycle. But after that, no one had seen him. The rider's number was switched off. Korede issued a bolo, "Be on the lookout," across all police divisions. "Find that Kiki rider," he growled. Minutes passed like hours. At 11 p.m., Korede got a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a picture. Dara. Bound. Blindfolded. Crying. Then another message, "The warehouse. Alone." Korede didn't wait. He ignored protocol, told no one. He drove straight to Iliko, gun strapped to his side, rage burning through his veins. When he reached the warehouse, the gates were already open, like they were waiting for him. He stepped inside. The room was candlelit. Dara sat in the middle, tied to a wooden chair. Beside him stood Matha, no longer pretending, no longer in rags. He wore a plain black tunic and carried a long blade. His eyes were calm, unblinking. "You chased spirits," Matha said softly. "Now they've come for you." Korede raised his weapon. Let him go, or I'll shoot. But Mafa only smiled. This is the price of knowing too much. You opened the wrong door. Korede stepped forward, slow, careful. He had one shot. Just one. Then bang. A single gunshot echoed. Mafa staggered, dropped the blade, and fell. Behind him, Zina stood at the doorway, hand shaking around a smoking pistol. She had followed Korede, knowing he wouldn't wait for backup. Korede rushed forward, cut his son loose, and hugged him tightly. I told you, Zina said, voice shaking. He wouldn't run. He would come for blood. As sirens approached in the distance, Korede looked down at Mafa, now gasping on the floor. Who else is part of this, he asked. Mafa coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. You think I'm in? He whispered. This was never about me. Then he stopped breathing. And the room fell into silence. The following morning, the headlines were brutal. Serial killer shot dead. Warehouse horror in Ikota. But behind the media frenzy, Korede and Zina knew they were far from done. Mafa was dead, yes. But his final words rang like a curse, this was never about me. That meant the real masterminds were still out there, hidden behind business suits, respectability, and wealth. Chief Iranmos released a statement condemning the satanic acts and praising the police. Baba Osato's shrine mysteriously burned down overnight. No one was found inside. Witnesses said strange men came in a black SUV and left just before the fire started. The network was cleaning house. Korede was placed on suspension pending investigation. Some claimed he had acted emotionally. Others whispered that he'd uncovered too much. But even off-duty, Korede continued digging. With Zina's help, he tracked financial records, offshore accounts, and real estate transactions tied to the abandoned ritual sites. Patterns formed hidden in land purchases, false names, shell companies. Zina received another anonymous message. This time, it was a voice note, stop, or we'll finish what Mafa started. She didn't flinch. Let them come, she told Korede. I'm not hiding anymore. Together, they went public. Zina held a press conference, sharing her story, the footage, the photos, the underground room. At first, the media called her a liar. But the evidence was overwhelming. Then something unexpected happened. Families of other victims came forward. Dozens. Women who had disappeared from different states, all tied by location, time, or witness accounts. Pressure mounted. The federal government formed a task force. Names were unsealed. Arrests were made, 2 politicians, a spiritualist, and a bank executive. But the real victory came when Chief Iranmos was caught trying to board a private flight out of the country with forged passports and $800,000 in cash. He didn't resist. He simply said, the gods demand payment. His trial became national news. Back in Ikota, the streets were quiet. Mafa's old sleeping spot now sat empty, littered with sand and cigarette butts. No one spoke of him anymore, as if erasing him would erase the horror. But Zina still passed by every morning. She had become a counselor for survivors and families of the missing. Her name was now synonymous with strength. Inspector Korede was reinstated with honor. But he no longer trusted smiles or silence. Every face could hide a demon. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Korede stood beside Zina outside the rebuilt clinic. Children played nearby. The world looked normal again. Do you think it's really over? She asked. He watched the sky for a long time. No, he said. But it's quieter. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. Then a black car passed slowly. Tinted windows. No license plate. Neither of them said a word. But they both knew. The shadows weren't gone. Just waiting. The end. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories.